If you'd like to support my guitar building YouTube channel, visit eguitarplans.com and buy a plan. A link is in the description below. Now on with the video. All right, so I've got the blanks ready for this next guitar build. And if you recall in the last episode, all the wood that I'm using was cut from a 1-inch thick oak butcher block tabletop. So I've got my neck blank, the blanks for the body, and somewhere around here I have the fretboard blank. So what I need to do now is I need to jump on the computer and finalize the design as well as prepare the files that I'm going to need in order to cut the neck, the fretboard, and the body on my CNC machine. So let's head over to the design lab here on the sprawling Highline Guitars campus, and I'll show you the process. Now, I've talked about my CNC process before in other videos, so I'm not really going to dive into it in too much detail here. I'll try and post a link to other videos where I've gone into detail about how I generate the files, but I'll just sort of touch on it here. But what you see here is the body for the guitar that I'm going to build. And this was done in Adobe Illustrator. Now, you can use really any sort of a two-dimensional CAD program or vector-based drawing program. I use Illustrator because I just happen to have a subscription to the Adobe Creative Suite. So, and I've been using Illustrator for so long that I can work really fast in the program. So a drawing like you see here can literally take me 10, 15 minutes to draw it, and then I can move on to creating my tool paths. But you can see here it's a single cutaway shape. This is my Bravo guitar body design. And this particular build is going to feature a humbucker single coil configuration. And that's what these drawings here indicate. These are the pockets for the pickups. And then these are the pockets for the wire routing. And then over here we have, down in the lower right corner, this is the control cavity. So there will be a tone pot, a 3-way or 5-way switch, I haven't really decided yet, and another pot for volume. And then I have a shelf. This is a recessed shelf area for the cover. Then these other shapes that you see here are cutouts for weight relief. These are going to be chambers that will be routed into the body to help relieve the weight, because this guitar, since it's going to be made out of a slab of oak, could be really, really heavy. So I want to relieve some of the weight. Now, I know some of you will ask, well, how does that affect tone? And my answer to that would be, well, I'm sure it does. I just don't know how it's going to affect tone. There's really no way that you can measure that and determine by the shape or the size of the chambers how it's going to affect tone. But since tone is subjective, it really doesn't matter. I just want to make sure that I can remove enough wood to get the weight of the body down to something a little bit more manageable, something probably in the neighborhood of around 3 to 3.5 pounds. So that's what you see here with these shapes. Now, another thing I wanted to do when I build this guitar is I decided it'd be kind of cool to do some sort of an inlay design on the body just to kind of make it look a little more interesting. So what I've done is I've created some artwork here, and this is on another layer. And this is a dragon that I have come up with. It's basically a 4-tailed dragon. And the way I did this was I did a Google image search for black and white vector dragons, and there were a ton of them out there. I mean, thousands of them, literally. And I searched for actually several hours before I found a couple of dragons that I thought would look really cool on this guitar. Now, of course, the problem is you never find artwork that's going to fit just right. So really what you find on the internet is really more of a reference point. So I took a couple of the dragons and created this design in Vector in Illustrator, and I manipulated it so that these tails would wrap around the controls, and the flames coming out of its mouth would be right up against or in the direction of where the bridge is going to sit. So what I'll do is when I carve this on the CNC machine is this will all be cut down into the body, probably about a 16th of an inch. Then I'll fill it with a mixture of epoxy and strontium aluminate glow in the dark powder. And the main body of the dragon will probably be kind of a aqua blue color. And then the flames would be kind of a yellow orange or a red orange color. So that's what I'm going to do with the body. Now, what I'm also going to do, and you'll see here in a minute, is I'm going to use the head of the dragon as my 12th fret inlay on the fretboard. So that's kind of where this stands as far as how I created this file. So what I'll do is I'll jump over to, this is Easel. And this is an online CNC solution. And this was developed by Inventables, and I've been using it ever since I used the Xcarve. And I find that this program is incredibly easy to use for generating your designs, creating the tool paths, and then actually sending the files to the CNC machine to cut the parts out. Even though I don't use my Xcarve anymore, this program still works with the Arduino Gerbil controller that I have on my current CNC machine. Now what you see here is the very first file that I have to carve on the CNC machine, and this is my 12th fret inlay on the fretboard. And it also has at the top the slot for a nut. And if you look at the bottom of this page, you'll see all these different pages. And these are all the different carving operations that I'll do for this entire guitar, the fretboard, the neck, and the body. So this first one, as I said before, is the 12th fret inlay. And you can see here on the right side of the screen a preview of what that will look like when it's carved into the fretboard. And again, I'll be filling this with the epoxy resin mixed with glow powder. Then the next file is the slots for the frets. And I cut this using a very small bit on my CNC machine. I think it's 0.023 inches in diameter. It's a 2-flute spiral upcut bit. And to cut something like this with the CNC machine takes about 45 minutes, which isn't bad when you consider how long it takes to cut it by hand. Really, the only faster way to do it is to use a table saw with a blade that has a kerf that's equal to your what you need the fret slot to be. The only disadvantage with those is, or actually I should say the advantage of using a CNC machine is I can stop the slot short of the edge of the fretboard, which gives me a blind fret slot. Now the next file I have to cut is the perimeter shape and the radius of the fretboard. Now this was actually generated in another program. I created a 3D model in Rhinoceros 3D. Okay, so what you see here is the 3D model that I created for the fretboard. And this includes the perimeter shape as well as the radius. And I'll use this to create the G-code file, which I then import into Easel. So Easel, not only can I import my Illustrator layouts in here to establish toolpaths, but I can take existing G-code formed or written in other programs and bring it in here, keep everything nice and organized, and Easel will serve as my G-code sender to my CNC machine. So here you can see that's this is the radius that's going to be sent to my controller or my CNC machine. All these blue lines, that's the simulation of how the tool will move across as it forms that radius. And the red lines are rapid moves when the bit has to move from one part of the blank to another. And then the next carving operation here is for the truss rod slot that will be carved into the neck. And it's basically the same thing. It's a G-code file that will carve out the slot that the truss rod will fit into. Then next is the headstock, the front of the headstock. And it's an angled headstock. So it will carve all the way down into the angle. And all of my carves are usually, well, not all of them, but carves like this one involve two operations: a rough cutting operation, which will hog out most of the wood quickly and efficiently, but it will leave a rough surface. Then I'll come back and do the finish pass, which cleans up the surface and makes it nice and smooth. So then once I finish the front of the headstock, the next thing I have to do is flip the blank on my CNC machine over, and I'll carve the back side of the headstock, which you see being done here. And once that's complete, I can then move on to carving the back contour of the neck, which is what you see here. And it probably doesn't make a lot of sense. If you look at the actual 3D model that I've created for this, this is what that back contour will look like. The headstock will be done separately, which I just showed you, and then the back contour and the heel will be carved out in this operation in Inventor or in easel. So pretty simple process. And I use these same files, with the exception of anything that's got a custom inlay, multiple times. So I'll carve out mini guitars using these same files. So it's sort of like you create it once and then reuse it multiple times. But once I finish with this, I'm ready to move on to the body. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to carve out the recess for my control cavity into the back of the blank. Now remember, this blank is two pieces, a top piece and a bottom piece. This will be carved obviously into the bottom. Then what I'll do is I'll flip the bottom piece over and I will cut out all the cavities. And that's what you see here. So you see the control cavity as well as the weight relief cavities and a little small portion of the neck cavity. So that's how I'll do that. And then when I finish with this, I can remove this part of the blank. I can actually cut away the tabs that hold the body into the blank so that I liberate the body itself from the blank. Then I'll move on to putting the top part of the blank onto the CNC machine, and I will carve out the design for the dragon, which is what you see here. And this will be carved using two different bits. I'll start with an 1/8 inch diameter bit to hog out most of the wood. Then I'll come back with a 15-degree V bit and carve out all the points and fine details in the design. And this is what it will look like. So after that, I can, once the body's all cut out, I can fill this with my epoxy glow-in-the-dark mixture. But then once I've finished carving out the dragon, I'll flip the blank over again, and I'm going to carve out the weight relief channels and cavities from into the backside. And that'll also include, my neck pocket, my pickup pockets, and as well as the top part of the control cavity and all the holes that will be drilled for the pots and switches. And that's what this will look like over here on the right side of the screen. So once that's done, I can then liberate the top part of the body from the blank and then bring the two halves together, glue them up, clamp them down, let them sit overnight, and I'll have a body that's ready for finish sanding. And then the very last file I have to cut, and this is one that I always seem to forget, is the control cavity cover. And that's what you see here. So this will just be cut out of a piece of wood that's a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch thick. And once I have that cut, all the cutting operations are done. All I have to do is some final sanding, glue the neck into the body, and start applying my finish. All right, guys. Well, that's all the time I've got for this episode. Next week in part 3, I expect to start cutting these parts on the CNC machine, and that's where things start to get fun. So until the next episode, if you don't already subscribe to my channel, go down and hit that subscribe button, click the bell for notifications so that each time I post a new guitar building video, you'll get notified by email that it's ready to watch. And as always, click the thumbs up for if you like the video. That always helps me. And if you'd like to show some support for this channel and keep me chugging along, head over to eguitarplans.com and purchase a plan for either a guitar or one of the tools that I use for building guitars, including my CNC machine. You know, even if you're not going to build those tools and guitars, anything that you purchase on eGuitar Plans helps to keep this channel moving forward. So until the next episode, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.